Fire with all this electrical equipment up here. My name is Stacey Cochran, and I want to thank you all for coming tonight. The topic of tonight's discussion is going to be how to publish an audiobook, and I can answer any questions that you have about publishing in general, as well as about how to publish an audiobook. So, specifically what I wanted to talk about was I've published now 2 audiobooks as what is called a patio book. How many folks are familiar with a patio book? Anybody? A couple of people? How about podcasting in general? Okay. Well, what a patio book essentially is, it's an audio version of your book published online. And at patiobooks.com, this website that I'll be talking a little bit about tonight, they publish audiobooks online as digital files. And these digital files are published episodically. So for example, I've got a book called The Colorado Sequence, which I have a print copy of here, and I'll pass that around. But this big, thick hunk of a book here, I'm publishing at patiobooks.com as an audiobook, unabridged. And what I do, hey Jack, how are you? Is about every week to 2 weeks, I upload a new episode from the Colorado Sequence. So instead of putting the whole book online at one time, basically the person who's doing the narration for the book, who is an actor friend of mine, reads about 25 to 30 minutes, gets the CDs to me, and then I upload them to Patio Books.
Could you broadcast it all at once?
You could, although the file would be so large that it would be difficult to upload. If it's a big book like that, because that'd be like about, the finished recording would be like 18 hours of recording.
But what about 2? If it's
2 hours you could probably do. You may even at Patio Books, they may ask you to break it up into 4 different episodes. The ideal episode at Patio Books, which is not the only online publisher doing this kind of thing, but that's the one I'll talk a little bit about tonight. Another one that you might put on, if you're taking notes, is audible.com. I met the director of content actually at Audible at a conference I was at about a week ago. And Audible is a paying venue in contrast to Patio Books, which is done mostly for the love of it. So you might explore both of those if you're interested in publishing an online audiobook. But at Patio Books, the ideal episode length is about 25 to 30 minutes. And they say that because it's the typical commute, or that's the average commute time to work. And so what a lot of these folks are doing, who are really into the whole podcast novel community, is they're downloading episodes onto their iPod and then putting it into their car on their drive to work or their train ride to work or what have you. So the ideal length is about 25 to 30 minutes. I've uploaded episodes of the Colorado Sequence as long as about 45 minutes and as short as about 15. So that's basically what it is. With the Colorado Sequence right now, I'm up to episode 13, and I'm about halfway through the book. So the total number of episodes by the end of the book is going to be somewhere around 25 to 30 total episodes. Is everybody still with me here? Okay, so what I wanted to do was give a sample. I don't know if anybody's seen or listened to the patio book for the Colorado Sequence, but I'll play this for about 90 seconds so you can kind of get the idea of what the format is like, and then I'll answer any questions that you have, and I got some more stuff here to talk about as well. So what we're looking at here, if this works the way that I'm hoping it will, is this is just this is the website at patiobooks.com for my particular book. It's a free website to use. It doesn't cost anything to use. The web address, the URL is Podio, and that's PODIOBOOKS, patiobooks.com. It's kind of a play on words between podcast and audiobooks, patiobooks.com. And then once you're at Patio Books, you can search for, mystery fiction, science fiction, literary fiction, poetry, chick lit, and they have all these different genre categories available there, or you can search for a book by title or for the author's name. Yes?
A question. When you post your audiobook, Do people have a choice of like segment 1, segment 2, segment 3?
Yes.
And so in essence, it really is the whole book.
Mhm.
They're just picking.
Mhm. Right now, I've got, like I said, 12 or maybe 13 episodes. I think 13. I just uploaded one like 2 days ago for the Colorado sequence. And if I scroll down the page here, I know you probably can't see this very well, but if I scroll down the web page here, at the bottom, the different episodes are listed over here. So if I wanted to listen to a specific episode, then I could just click on that, and it'll open a QuickTime browser on the computer screen, and it'll play it from that episode. And what I'm finding with my book, the stats behind it, I've had about 1,500 downloads of just episode 1. In contrast to, say, about 1,200 downloads of episode 2. And then it gets progressively less towards the most recent episodes. So what that says to me is I'm either losing folks along the way, or some folks are going back and re-listening to the first episode to kind of refresh themselves with the book. All total, I just started publishing this in May of this summer, and I've had over 10,000 downloads of this audiobook so far, all total, for all the episodes combined. Yes, sir?
Is each download equal to a chapter?
Not exactly, no. But if somebody downloads an episode,
Per episode?
then that would be, for me, no. I guess that would depend on the length of your chapters. For example, the first 3 chapters of the Colorado sequence are almost exactly the length that I need for an episode. They're about 30 minutes whenever you read it. However, about chapters 7, 8, 9, and 10, somewhere in there, the chapters get a lot shorter. And so what I was doing was I was uploading, for say episode 7, I would upload chapters 7, 8, and 9 to complete the 30-minute window.
To induce potential patrons to go past the first episode, do you leave cliffhangers?
Yes, with this book. Although I didn't plan it that way. That happens to be the style of this novel. There literally is a cliffhanger ending for like episode 9, where a guy's hanging from the edge of a cliff. And what I'm finding with these books, the ones that do very well have that kind of action-oriented feel to the books that have a cliffhanger at the ending. There have been successful books as well, though, that are more nonfiction. You guys, some of you might have been here for the podcast panel discussion we did a month or 2 ago, and one of the authors, Mur Lafferty, has done quite well with her books, and she does nonfiction as well as fiction. Without further ado, though, let me give you a sample of this. How many folks have actually listened to this by any chance? Not many, so this will be a great demonstration if this works.
The following is a audiobooks.com presentation. Hey folks, this is Stacey Cochran, author of the Colorado Sequence. Thanks so much for checking out my audiobook here at audiobooks.com. This audiobook presentation is narrated by Owen Daly. The print copy of the Colorado Sequence is copyrighted 2007, and this audiobook presentation is copyrighted 2008. Print copies of the Colorado Sequence are available through online retailers like Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble Online. To find out more about me or about the Colorado Sequence, please do visit my website, staceycochran.com. That's STACEYCOCHRAN.com. Thanks so much for listening to this introduction. And now, the Colorado Sequence, read by Owen Daly.
Chapter 1: The Caribbean Island. Dr. Amy Levine's interview with the U.S. government took place 90 miles east of Miami, Florida. Man-O-War Cay, Great Abaco Island. The island was privately owned by a firm known as Nanotech, but no nanotech employee had ever set foot on the island. No nanotech employee.
So that gives you a sense of the production, if you will. Yes.
Would this, if you have this, why would people not buy your book? Don't you want people to buy your book?
That is a great question, and it's a tough question to answer. I think I've actually sold more books for the Colorado Sequence online since giving this book away for free through Audiobooks. Now keep in mind, if you want to try to publish your audiobook through audible.com, they charge money. So you would earn a royalty each time that somebody downloads a version of your book. Through Audiobooks, though, it's all done for free. I was at the World Science Fiction Convention just this past weekend, or 2 weekends ago, I guess it's been now, and this topic came up on a panel on podcasting, and the publisher for Baen Books, one of the leading science fiction publishers in the world, mentioned or pointed out that since they give away free ebooks, there is a direct correlation to the number of books actually sold in print. Now, she didn't have the data there to confirm that, but this is somebody who's kind of running a publishing company, and they're seeing that giving this stuff away for free net sales. But that's something that you have to weigh for yourself, and I was skeptical of at first. I was like, well, why do I want to give this away for free? Yes, sir?
I've seen that over and over again. There's something called Sound View Executive Summaries, even though it's called Sound View. It's a printed synopsis of large business books. I've had some of my own books picked up by Sound View Summaries. Publishers love it because they have data that shows that also increases the sale of the hardcover book. But I actually have a question for you. Your voice is fine for narration, so why did you go with somebody else and did you have to pay them?
That's a great question, and thanks for the compliment. I don't actually feel terribly confident in my reading skill, although I'm getting a little bit more confident in it. This actor who's doing this lives here in Raleigh, and we're just friends. And he's not charging to do this. He's sort of an amateur actor who wanted the chops, you know. And that happens. There may be a couple of actors in the room here tonight who would be interested in doing something like this. So that's the short answer to that. Are there other questions? So, yes, Jack.
I just wanted this whole process of going through audiobooks. Does this help or hurt you in terms of getting picked up by a mainstream publishing company? You can show that you've got a readership, but since you're giving it away for free, does that hurt you or help you if somebody discovered your book here?
That's a great question as well. It sort of relates to your question too. There have been a handful, and let me stress, just a handful of authors who have been so successful with this, and I'd say less than 5, who have been so successful. There are only 200 titles though on Audiobooks. This is a brand new, fairly new enterprise. But there have been about 5 authors whose audiobooks have done so well in terms of the sheer number of subscribers that they get and downloads that they get, that they were able to use that capital, that social capital, if you will, to then sell their book to a major publisher. One of the authors who is probably most famous from this particular community is Scott Sigler, who writes sort of dark, Stephen King-esque suspense fiction. And he had, at one point, I think the number was about 25,000 subscribers, which amounted to a couple of 100,000 downloads. And so if you can have that kind of success, I think that it can contribute to the sale of a book, because these are people who are actively interested in your audiobook, who have signed up to subscribe to it. And so if you've got a print version of it available, they tend to buy it. That seems to be what's happening for some of these authors.
I would think if somebody listened to your book and liked it, they would want a physical copy of it.
And another thing that this community has done to contribute to that is they're published episodically. So like I said, the Colorado Sequence, I began in May. I probably won't be done with the audiobook full version from beginning to end until like December or January. And so what I think I've noticed happening in the past couple of weeks or months is people are getting kind of impatient with the fact that the book is taking 6 months to produce, and so then they go and buy the print version to read with it. And some people like having a print version to read at night by their nightstand and having the audiobook version to listen to on their commute to work or while checking email or something like that. Mm-hmm.
You have your book, or I guess people could put it on other podcasts that are books, but you have it on one website. Is it kind of verboten to put it on another one? In other words, is audiobooks.com going to be your principal and only vehicle?
No. At least from Podiobooks' perspectives, from their perspective, they wouldn't mind. Now, a company like Audible, who's buying the digital audio rights to your book, they would probably mind if you went out and then had the book available for free at Podiobooks.
So as long as you're staying with free websites, theoretically, you could put it on dozens.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they have that's neat too is they have this sort of link system, a bookmark system, where you can, once you begin publishing your Podiobook at podiobooks.com, you can select all of these different RSS feed distributions. So you can get your book listed in Dig and Delicious and Twitter and all of these sort of social networking sites, if you will, which then makes it accessible to folks there. Another site that seems to be pretty popular is the Podcast Alley and then Podcast Pickle, which it's very easy to do once you get your book published. You just select these things to basically distribute your book via those other outlets, and people are finding the book from there as well. So again, all total, I've had over 10,000 downloads for the whole 13 episodes, so that works out to a little less than 1,000 downloads per episode. The Colorado Sequence was a book that I had shopped around extensively on my own to literary agents. And I'd gotten a few nibbles from agents who asked to see the sample manuscript or sample pages from the manuscript, but ultimately we weren't able to find a traditional publisher for it, which is the case with a lot of aspiring writers. So what this has done is it's created an audience for this book where there would have been none before. So I guess my attitude about it is, or my philosophy that I'm beginning to develop with this is, if you've got a book and you've tried the traditional routes and you can't find a traditional publisher who wants to pay you $20,000 to publish your book, instead of just filing it away in the proverbial trunk and never letting anybody see it, here's an alternative to actually do something with it.
That your book, though, is published.
I do have a print version available through Lulu. So,
Oh, it's self-published.
yes.
Okay.
So that version that was being passed around, that's a self-published version of that book. So I'm kind of covering both bets, Even though I wasn't able to find a traditional publisher, I went ahead and put a print version out, and then I had the audiobook version available here. So, and as I've been doing this over the past few years, this whole sort of machine, if you will, of marketing has gotten more and more fine-tuned. And so like the next book that I'll put out, I'll probably try to have the print version coincide closer to having the audiobook version online, and you just get better and better as you go along with this stuff. Matt?
Couple of questions. What about niche books or books that are just buying of themselves?
Sure.
Have a smaller. Will they do stuff like that, or do they want more?
They will.
Type? They will.
That's one of the nice things about Podiobooks is right now they're not vetting for content. If you've got the technical wherewithal to actually get the book available online, if you know how to create an MP3 file and that sort of thing, which I'm going to give a demonstration of here in a minute, they don't vet it. In fact, they've had one or two sort of even controversial titles, like sort of adult theme, heavy duty stuff. And some of the listeners have said, you guys you're going to the ditch with this kind of fiction. But their philosophy has been, hey, we're not vetting this in a traditional sense, saying, well, you're good and you're not. And so they're open to just about anything if you've got the technical skill to get it online.
One other question: must it be at least self-published? Must there be a physical publishing of the book?
No.
First? Okay.
In fact, a couple of their authors, Scott Sigler is one who's done very well. He started his very first book that he put up online, same story. He had tried, I think he had actually had a traditional publisher who ended up folding And then he had this book that had gone into the trunk for a year or two, and he couldn't find a publisher to publish it. And he said, well, I'm going to do this as a podcast novel online. This was going back probably about 3 or 4 years ago when this stuff was just absolutely brand new. And he was kind of at the front of this curve and has done quite well just publishing the Patio book. I think subsequently he's now sold the print versions of his books.
But I think that goes back to the last meeting that we had here about, you know, announcing that it's copywritten. If you don't have it published, it can't be copywritten if it's not published.
Well, you own the copyright to your book. That's just part of our legal system. When you write something, you own the copyright to it. If somebody
You
ever,
don't have to have a piece of paper saying that you.
unless you go to court to then sue somebody, then you're going to need to prove it. So that's, but this is a key concept to grasp about copyright. Everybody in this room is protected by our copyright laws. If you go home and write, you know, a novel tonight or a short story, you own the copyright to that book. You're the proprietor of that. What the question though sort of leads to is, well, if you put this out on the internet and somebody, let's say Disney, you know, steals it and makes a movie out of this, what is your legal ground for then, you know, suing them for money? Well, then you have to prove that you were the original creator of it, and that's when it's good to have registered with the U.S. Copyright Office, or at the very least to have sent out a manila envelope with your manuscript in it proving that you had, you know, written it at a certain date, because it'll have the postmark on it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was saying actually, one thing I do is I just email the files myself and keep them.
There you go.
You know, so that there is an electronically date stamped copy of files.
And in this day and age too, another thing which you probably are aware of, if you're working in Microsoft Word or some similar type Word program, there's probably a date embedded somewhere in that file that says, yeah, in the properties of the file. So if it ever got to a situation where you had to go to court because of that, then you'd have proof.
There's a million ways to show it, but Writer's Market, which comes out every year, has a very good chapter. Same thing with Jeff, what's his name?
Jeff Herman.
Jeff Herman's book has a very good chapter on copyright. I have a question, and forgive me because I missed the first 7 minutes if you already covered this. Now that you have so many thousands of listeners downloading your material, are you now going to make your launch back into the mainstream publishing arena and say to an agent or publisher, see, I have this many downloads, there must be some interest?
Well, I've never really left it, but you mean with a specific title.
And a specific number that you can show, you can demonstrate. These sites can be audited, you can get actual figures.
That's a great question. It's so new to me. I haven't gotten there beyond thinking. When I was at the World Science Fiction Convention about a week or two ago, I was listening to these traditionally published authors. These guys who we would all say, well, he's an author. You know, he's got a book published with big time publisher in New York, and a few of them had podcast their novels. 1 or 2 of them through Patio books, and they started talking numbers. And it was just eye-opening because their numbers were not really any greater than what I've got. This was just a week or 2 ago. So.
Once you pass 10,000, you have enough to go talk to somebody.
And I think you've got a good point. Earlier this summer, I did actually sell a book. My wife and I sold a book to Macmillan, specifically the imprint St. Martin's Press, which is a major publisher. This is a different book than what's on here, though. Right now, I've got so many things in the air that it's kind of hard to keep up with them all on a day-to-day basis. But I think it's a great point. Once the numbers are high enough, I said something to one literary agent who was on a panel who had podcast his novel as well. He was a literary agent / writer, and when I threw out the number that I had 10,000 downloads for this book so far, and with the previous podcast novel close to 50,000 downloads total, his eyebrows went up and he kind of looked at me. He was like, who is this guy? Let me take down his, you know.
You're leaving money on the table, man.
Maybe very, very well so. I think I'm kind of at the point with these books where maybe there's a market for it. I believed in the book to begin with. I thought it was publishable to begin with, but convincing somebody else is tough to do. These numbers might help that. Yep.
I think this also, you got to think beyond just this book, because you're trying to promote your brand, and then if you build an audience for this book, and then the next book you write, you automatically got a following. So you really got to look beyond this book. You may not hit your home run on this one, but you're building up a base of followers to the next one, and you can use that to sell the next one. So I've got this group that follows me here. So.
And I think that's closer to where I'm at psychologically. Right. Is I'm like, okay, I'm having fun with this. I've got an actor friend who's doing it. We're selling a few copies every couple of weeks. Nothing to buy a new home with or anything like that. But I'm having fun with it. I'm learning. We've got several hundred people who are listening to these episodes every time we put out a new one, and I'm thinking to the next book, a book that I've shopped around as well, that we got in front of a lot of big editors in New York, but ultimately nobody said, okay, we want to take a chance on this young suspense novelist. And so I'm thinking, well, how can I capitalize on this? And it just builds. All this stuff but builds momentum-wise. The stuff that I'm doing with the TV show helps. All of it does. If there aren't any other questions right this minute, I was going to do a demonstration of Audacity. Go ahead.
On Podcast, to the left-hand side, there's like a drop-down, and you can make a donation for listening to the podcast,
Yes.
correct? Where do those proceeds go? Is there a revenue split with the author and Patio, or
That's a great
does it go
question.
to charity?
They haven't gone into my pocket yet.
Okay, I was just wondering. I didn't know if there was some other.
No, she's got a great question. Through Patio Books, they do have a sort of a tip jar, if you will, an online PayPal tip jar. If somebody's listening to your audiobook and they say, hey, I want to throw $10 into the pot, they can do that. I need to follow up with the guys at Patio Books and see if I've actually gotten any donations. I figure it's very minimal, if anything. But I could be naive. There might be, there might be $80 there, or there might be a couple $100 there for all I know.
Would that money go to you?
They split it. I think it's, I want to say 75-25 split. So the author gets 75% of the proceeds, and then the company gets 25%. And again, if you're looking to take it to the next level, maybe Audible is the way to go. And Audible's at the point now where they need to develop content. All of Audible's content, though, just so you know, is developed in-house. So they produce all of their productions, which makes it a little bit more exclusive. They're more like a traditional publisher in that sense. And what they're really looking for, I discovered this through this convention I went to when I spoke with the director of content, is they're really looking for authors who already have an established audience that will buy the book in mass online through these audio books. So as a self-published author, as an aspiring author, it might be tough to get in there. I did press the guy, though. I said, would you guys ever consider, forming a strategic alliance with, say, a Lulu.com or something like that? And he said, well, that's something we've considered, and everything's kind of on the table right now. But they're looking for authors who already have an established audience that, say, if Stacey Cochran, if I had a book that came out through Audible, I could sell 5,000 units of it online right away as a given, whereas they're not really looking to nurture young writers. But I think that'll change. I think they're realizing that there's an audience for this kind of content through websites like Patio Books that they're having to compete with. So it'll be interesting to see how that transitions. Okay, what I'd like to do next, and I'll answer some more questions here in a minute, but I want to keep this rolling. There's a couple of different editing software programs that you would need to actually record. So what I'm going to do is do a demonstration of that. If you're taking notes, what do you need to create a Patio book or an audio book online? I've got 4 things here that you need. The first thing is a computer. How many folks have a computer? Okay, everybody's got a computer. Audio editing software is the second thing that you will need. Some sort of audio editing software for your computer. A lot of computers that are being put out now have this stuff already on the computers when you buy them. For example, if you buy a Mac like this, they have GarageBand that comes with with the computer. So it's already got this software on there. And I'll bet if you've never used it before, if you go home tonight afterwards and search around on your computer, you might find that it has audio recording and editing software on it. The third thing that you'll need is a microphone that'll plug into your computer in some way, shape, or form.
Sound canceling is the best if they're doing it from home.
Sound
Yeah,
canceling.
Sound canceling computer or microphone, because it won't pick up
Yes.
all the other stuff.
Cars racing by, dogs barking, that sort of thing.
The hum of your computer.
And believe me, my wife and I, we live on a very sort of busy street, backs up to the back of our house, and it's so frustrating to sit there and be, you know, midway through my chapter on my audiobook. If I'm doing a recording, I hear a Harley roar by outside and it picks up on the microphone, you know. But fortunately with this stuff too, when you get pretty, you know, comfortable with the software, if something like that happens, what I do is I don't even stop the recorder. I'll just take a deep breath, wait for the vehicle to move on down the road, and then I'll start over where the sound began, and then I'll go back and edit it after I'm done. Because all this is sort of non-linear, and I'll show you what that means in a minute here. So the four things you need is a computer, audio editing software, a microphone that'll plug into your computer, and microphones range in price anywhere from a Radio Shack mic for about $10 to literally a couple $1,000 mics that would be used in filmmaking or something like that. This microphone here is one that I highly recommend. It retails for about $80. This is the Samson CO1U, Samson SAMSON CO1U studio condenser mic. Like I said, it retails for about $80. It's one that works very well as a plug and play. And what that means is there's a cable that runs from here straight into the hard drive over here through a USB cable. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but that's all the setup there really is. There's a microphone. All this stuff here is the boom and the stand. That's a separate deal. But the mic here plugs straight from here. The cable runs into the computer through a USB port. And then the fourth thing that you'll need is an internet connection to be able to upload your files once you're done. So again, a computer, audio editing software, a microphone, and then some sort of internet connection. Everybody here has a computer. Everybody probably has an internet connection. So the big thing that you probably need is a mic and then the audio editing software. The audio editing software that I use and have gotten very comfortable using myself is called Audacity. That's actually the name of it, AUDACITY, Audacity. It's free. It's a free downloadable software program. If you go home and do a Google search for Audacity or go to Wikipedia and search for it, then you can get to the page where you can actually download it for free. A lot of computers, like I said, already have some of this stuff on there. If you've got a Mac, then it has GarageBand, and that might be better to start with to use. So let me just do a demo here. This is the Audacity template. I don't know how well you can see this computer, but if I wanted to do some recording, I just check my levels, make sure the input levels are high enough, and here we'll just go ahead and click record. And so this mic here is now recording. And you can see the waves here. If I said check, check, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing. And all this is doing is running from here through this cable into the computer, and then it's recording it here in Audacity. And I'll do a little playback. So this mic here is now recording. And you can see the waves here. If I said check, check, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing. And all this is doing is running from here to this computer. It does. So in other words, if you wanted to lay down some music on top of this, you can go up to your project window and I'll import audio, and then I'll find some sort of audio file maybe on the desktop here. Let's go with here's a little bluesy song that I downloaded from the net the other night. It'll take a minute or two to import the audio.
Where do you find stock music?
That's a great question, and it gets into that sort of internet ethical zone. I use CNET because all of their stuff is vetted, meaning that they're not going to put anything online that is illegal to download.
And C is?
C is the letter cat.
Oh, okay.
CNET.com. So here, to answer Jack's question, I've got the audio track. Here's this music that I just imported, and then I've got the thing that I was just saying a moment ago, and I'll go ahead and play this again. So you've got the music there. Because the levels are so high, you can't even hardly hear me speaking, so I'll pull the gain way down on the music. And so this mic here is now recording. So you can set up multiple tracks. You can see the waves here. If you have stuff in GarageBand, check 1 2 1 2 3. You could import, the thunder clapping, or the sound of rain, sound effects, and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a very versatile audio editing software program, Audacity. And then you have all kind of stuff you can do in post-production. If you wanted to compress the audio to even out the high ends and low ends, you can do that. If you wanted to add reverb, if you wanted to clean the audio up, so to speak, you can do all kinds of stuff in Audacity. Questions? Yes?
Now, the part that we heard, there was music behind the narration. Is there music behind the whole thing, or just at the beginning?
Just at the beginning. And that's totally up to you as a producer. The more complicated you want to make it, the better. It's totally up to you. For me, and what I was doing, at least with this, with the podcast of the Colorado Sequence, I've got the music for the intro, and then I've got about 2 to 5 minutes of music with the narration. And in fact, the first couple of episodes I did, I think I put too much music on it. And as I've gone along, I realized it's just too much work to add all these sound effects. And mainly what people want that are downloading this is just the book read well. That's what they want. A couple of bells and whistles to sort of jazz it up at the beginning and end help, but doing a full-scale sort of radio drama is not really necessary. Yes, did you have a question in the back? Any questions? Well, that's basically it. From here, what you've got, once you've got some audio recorded, you can create an MP3 file, which is ultimately what you're going to need to upload at patiobooks.com. So from here, what I would do if I wanted to create an MP3 file is I'd go up to the File menu, down to Export as an MP3, and then export it. And then that file, which will end up on the desktop, would essentially be the file that I'd be uploading to PatioBooks. I'd have to do a couple things like refine the tags for the file, the author name, the title of the book, and all that stuff. But in terms of the actual production itself, that's what you would want, would be an MP3. Does that make sense? Yes?
Really technical question. Do they restrict you to like 64 kilobits per second example, or?
They have very specific requirements in terms of the audio specifications. And I don't want to get into too much of the specifics of that. It's all on the website though. Okay. And they have a PDF that you can download. And when I did I've done 2 books. One I did like 4 years ago when they first started out, and I was totally learning my way with it. And I did the narration for that, and it was terrible. So when I got to doing the Colorado Sequence, I was like, well, I'm going to ask a couple of actor friends if they would mind doing it. And when I went to do the Colorado Sequence this time, it had been so long since the last one that I did, was I actually had a copy of the PDF file with all the specifications open on the window, on my computer screen, and then kind of went down the checklist and made sure that all the files were, tagged the right way. And honestly, that's the hardest part with PatioBooks, I think, is getting all the specs right. But once you do it once, then you can do it again and again and again, as many books as you want. Yep.
I guess we move over here. The gentleman who mentioned you developing like a following and a style and coming back with your next book leads me to the thought that you ought to keep the music at the start of your various episodes, maybe just shorten it,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even have a little musical outro at the end,
Mm-hmm.
because it becomes kind of synonymous with your stories.
It's very, very much branding is what we're talking
Yes,
about at this
it
point.
is. And even to the point of using the same music for the next book,
Mm-hmm.
given that you're still writing suspense novels and so
Mhm.
forth. Because if you listen to, Random House Audio or any of these other places, they all have their own opening, and you begin to.
Sure.
Nobody's going around humming this stuff, but it definitely is recognizable.
Well, I think it's a great point. The more you can sort of consolidate your brand, and the more people begin to recognize, oh, this is the guy who writes, mystery crime fiction, or this is the guy who writes, a chick lit, or this is the guy who writes poetry or has the art books or whatever.
Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The way that
Sure.
it was done on the radio. Gosh, I'm really dating myself, huh?
Well, we've all seen Alfred Hitchcock, don't worry.
It's in syndication. Yeah.
But I said radio.
Yeah, we said radio.
Yes.
Do you have any estimate about how much time you spend editing a 30-minute file?
That's a good question. The editing for a file, in terms of the time that I spend on it, is significantly less because I've got an actor who's doing these recordings. For example, what he does, he lives out in Wake Forest. This guy, some of you probably met him, Owen Daly. He's come to a few of our events. What he'll do is he does a recording. I think he uses Audacity. He may use GarageBand or something like that. Then when he's done, he puts it on a CD and he'll mail me the CD. There's a way to that he could send it online. I've tried to get him to do that, but he feels more comfortable doing the CDs and then mailing me the CDs, which is fine. Then I get a CD in the mail about once every couple of weeks, and I'll take the CD, pop it into the computer here, and from that point forward, I could probably edit it all for one episode in 20 minutes, 30 minutes. When I first started out doing this with Owen, it wasn't quite that fast, because we were having to kind of sync up what files he was sending, and I was kind of regrouping in terms of learning how to use audiobooks again after a long hiatus from using them before. But now that I've done 13 episodes, yeah, it takes maybe 20, 30 minutes to edit it. But now if I was doing the reading, it would take, I would say, probably 4 times that long.
Yeah, I would say that's accurate.
In other words, for about 30 minutes of reading, I'd say editing it and cleaning up all the ums and the pauses and the cars roaring past in the background would take about 2 hours. So you could count on that. And if you were doing like an hour, then it'd be 4 hours, So somewhere in that ballpark.
And is he doing it, he's just doing one take, he's not doing multiple versions of it or attempts of it?
Well, when he first started, when he did the very first episode, we redid the first episode like 4 different times. And those were sort of directorial, acting decisions that he and I collaborated on. Like one, he thought he was too reserved or whatever, or one he did in a kind of a little bit too pompous of a tone, I thought. And so we went back and forth until he had it the way that he was comfortable with for his first episode. And I think the first episode is the most important episode, because that's the one that ends up on the homepage prominently, and that's the one that most people are going to listen to, is that very first one. After that first episode that we got up online, from that point forward, he's basically done it in one take. Now, I haven't actually sat with him to see how much editing he's doing, but again, that ratio of, for 30 minutes of recording, it's probably taken 2 hours of editing is probably about accurate. Yes?
I was at a conference 2 weeks ago where a guy who had some kind of show called like the Morning Coach or the Morning Motivator or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
said that for the last couple of weeks he actually he had the #1 rated show for iTunes downloads. Like everybody listens
Sure.
every morning. He had a button on his site
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of like the tips to the author, tips
Mhm.
to the producer, and it came directly to him. He said he was averaging $1,000 a month Now, this is #1 on iTunes,
Mhm.
so that's a big deal. But it might be worth looking into how that tip jar
Mm-hmm.
is connected and how much is in it.
Sure.
I'd also be interested in knowing, I don't know, but is there a way to split and pay that? If somebody, say somebody sends $10 in because they
Mhm.
liked the episode, and say that your site takes 25%, you take 75%. Is there
Mhm.
a way to get one donation to go to 2 different accounts?
I'm sure there is. I'm sure PayPal is sophisticated enough that they could probably do that.
I'll bet you have money.
I probably would. I don't know how much money. I'm coming around to the realization as a self-published author, direct sales are tough. That's going to segue into, this is a little bit off topic from Patio Books, but I'll throw this out there just because this is brand new information. That's what we're here for, really, is talking about ways to make a little bit of extra cash. You guys know I have a website, the howtopublishabook.org website. And mostly what I've been doing with it is videos like what I'm doing tonight, or the interviews that I do at the TV studio with authors end up on that website via YouTube, and I put a little YouTube video screen up there. I've been doing this for pro bono, just to kind of learn what I'm doing and figuring out marketing and all this stuff. About 3 months ago, I don't know why I got convinced to do this, but I decided to put a Google AdSense banner on my website. You folks are familiar with these just like little banners that says, you know, visit this site to, you know, help with your home loan or whatever. And I had some flack back and forth with a couple of author friends about whether it sort of cheapened the site or whatever, and I didn't know. I said, well, let me just give it a shot. Some people have said this is a way to make money, and I buried it on my homepage, way down at the very bottom near the copyright of the page, and didn't think about it at all the rest of the summer. About 3 or 4 days ago, I was like, oh no, what it was I had gotten a postcard from Google, and said you need to activate your Google AdSense account because you've been making money. I was like, okay, well that's interesting. So I logged in. I mean, this is something I had totally forgotten was really even on the site, and I didn't think I was making any money from it. So I activated the account and then did all the steps that I needed to do, and then I saw my total earnings for the summer, and it was like $60 just by having a banner on the website at the very bottom, buried near the copyright of the page. But every time somebody scrolls over that, not even clicking on it, but just scrolls over it, I get like 1/10 of a penny or something. You know.
From whoever you're advertising?
Right, from Google AdSense. If somebody clicks on the banner, the amount is significantly higher. I had 6,000 impressions is what they call it when somebody just sees it. And I had like 60 clicks. So the math, very rough math that I figured out was, well, if you've got about 1,000 people who see your banner, 1,000 people, you're making about $10 per 1,000 impressions. I got so excited about this. You know, it's like $60. It's not all that much money. But I got so excited about this. I was like, well, I wonder if I actually put this in a more prominent position on my website, you know, instead of burying it down at the bottom. And you guys know I do a lot of stuff with YouTube and have videos online, that sort of thing. And all on like Thursday afternoon, I put together the idea, or I realized YouTube has this service where you can put a YouTube video on your website related to the content of your website that acts as a television advertisement. It's like a commercial. So what I did was I played around with this, and I typed in different keywords, because you can use different keywords to select the different kinds of videos. So I put in the keyword of publish, just the word publish. So all the videos that they'll show via this window, which I select where I want to put it on my website, are related to publishing. And I watched a few of the videos, and they're very much related to what the How to Publish a Book site is. One of them was how to actually storyboard a children's book. And so a lot of the content was very closely related to what is on the website. Now the interesting thing is, I think you get paid a heck of a lot more if somebody watches the video. And so I don't know, it'll be interesting to see 3 months from now if I leave that up there, you know, will it be significantly more? I don't know. The technology is all so brand new that it's, you know, the people who are figuring out how to do this are figuring out as fast as YouTube can get the technology to a point where you can actually use it. So, Cal?
you're sitting there and you have writer's block or something and you have nothing else to do, can you click on your own website and just run your mouth back and forth?
I don't think you can do that. I think it's sophisticated enough that it recognizes the IP address.
Yeah, they'll throw you out of the program if they think
Yeah.
that you're cheating.
Yeah. So, no,
We'll all go
I had a
banner.
well, I had a video. Maybe if this thing works, I could show you exactly what I'm talking about here. If the internet's working. Again, this is kind of unrelated to, the audiobooks, but it's. I guess the point that I was trying to make was I'm realizing direct sell is very hard. There's nothing harder than saying, hey, would you buy my book? But if you can make money from somebody just scrolling over your website, that's easy. I mean, that doesn't require a commitment on somebody's. How to publish I think there's an A in there. So this is the How to Publish a Book website. Yeah, and this is the, if this thing doesn't crash, is the ad. So I've got a little TV window there at the top of the page, and I'll click on it just for the sake of showing you guys what this does.
I'm Bobby Linkamer on behalf of ExpertVillage.com, and I'd like to invite you to visit my website at writeandnonfictionbook.com.
Paid money.
This is my self-made Bible. Of course, everything has my workbook on the front of it. I really want to get that out there into the world. This is everything I have ever read or found about
some sort of publishing-related content.
This is my marketing plan.
She's talking about book marketing and what have you. And every time the page is refreshed, it brings up a different video. So if I click, I think it does that.
Do you have any control over the content?
Yes, that was what I was saying with the keywords. By entering the keyword of publish, it doesn't put episodes of amateur style punk on there or something. It puts, publishing related content.
Related to whatever you told it to.
Yeah.
So if you don't actually know what's going to come up.
No, but you can actually, if you find one that you don't like, or if it's a competitor, you can ban that. Ban's kind of a strong word, but you can deselect that particular advertisement. So if you've got a website on automotive repair, or or on the Susan G. Komen breast cancer awareness, you could put up a little video related to that, and be making money every time somebody clicks on it, which is, to me, it's just. I've been doing this stuff for free, and so to see that I was actually earning money by people just scrolling over the banner was like, wow, okay, this is a way to actually, help out with the groceries every month or so. Or at the very least, pay for the website itself. So, are there other questions? Yes?
More technical comments. Young lady was talking about reports on mic self-canceling so you don't get the buzz, the hum. A lot of times that's, if you use an analog mic, plugging it to the sound card, a lot of buzz and hum comes from the fact you got a El Cheapo sound card sitting beside the computer. What you're doing is, so the difference there is that you're changing that from analog to digital at the microphone, and when it goes to the computer, it's already a digital signal. So a lot of times the buzz and hum is not the microphone element, it's the fact that if you're using like a round, 8-inch plug into your computer, you're sending analog right into the computer. It's like a verted side. And that picks up a lot of.
It'll actually, I think this type of microphone has sound canceling in it, but if you buy the headsets and they don't have sound canceling, when you're recording, you'll hear from your mouth. I don't know if you've heard that. You hear this rush onto the microphone. It's intelligent enough in the cheaper microphones, like even a $35 microphone, it can be sound canceling. It's not an exorbitant amount of money, but the difference between $35 and $10, if you're editing your piece, is substantial.
But you'll be aware the analog mic versus digital mic. The analog mic is going to be noisier in general because you're doing this conversion inside the computer with the cheap electronics versus there his analog, his voice is being converted at the microphone to digital outside the computer, and you get a cleaner sound. True. You pick up stuff on the
Sure.
smartphone, but you get a lot of stuff inside the computer.
And even, I mean, this game of technology, it's a game of, and I'm realizing this with filmmaking, it's a game of how much money do you feel comfortable spending, you know, so it's sort of a risk versus rewards kind of thing. You know, an $80 mic might be a little too much for some people who just want to kind of start. A lot of computers have an internal mic on it. As you guys can see, I'm recording here tonight. This is sort of the next step from this. I think, like you said, Grant, you know, having the analog kind of creates a little bit of feedback and buzz and that sort of thing. This here is it's just a studio condenser mic with a plug-and-play USB cable, which is pretty good too. But you guys might have seen me recording a couple of different times on the computer when I've done events here, and I've had it crap out on me a few times. I've had it just crash. I had it crash with the Diane Chamberlain panel that we did, and then I had no audio. And then last month with the Martha Witt panel, it recorded for about 20 minutes, and then about 20 minutes in, it just started static. It was just total static for the next 40 minutes. And so what I was realizing was the USB, although it's better than I think an analog, it isn't without its complications. Now, if you're sitting at home and can re-record and you have the comfort of doing that, then that's no big deal. But if you're doing something like this up here where you've got one take and one take only and you can't repeat all of this, what I then invested in, and this was paid for actually from the publisher, who has bought my wife and I's book because they gave us a technology grant, is a digital recorder. Now this is a pretty high-end digital recorder that I'm recording with here, but just so you see like sort of the next level, this mic here that I have, this lavalier mic, runs into the side of the digital recorder with a 3-pronged XLR cable. And basically what this is doing is it's just a heck of a lot higher quality equipment. This thing retailed for about $800. So, and I wouldn't have been able to do that had the publisher that we sold our book to not given us a really healthy technology grant to get content like this online to correlate with the book. So,
But you can still edit it with Audacity and all that? I mean,
yes, what this is doing is it's creating a digital file, which I'll then use a FireWire cable when I go home tonight to pull the digital file from here over to Audacity, and that's where I'll edit all of this for the TV show, essentially. Speaking of TV shows, there's a segue. Bless you.
Next week.
Yeah, we'll be doing, if you're interested in getting involved with the community access television station that we have in Wake County, either with the Artist Craft show that I do or starting your own TV show, I'm going to lead kind of a discussion on how that works. So you might check the meetup site for that if you're interested in that. Are there other questions?
Actually, I just had a comment, Stacey. I can tell you the cheapest way
Mm-hmm.
to get a clean recording if you want to do it yourself. And it's so old school, it'll make you laugh.
Mm-hmm.
When we did my radio show several times, one time in particular, somebody set off the fire alarms in our studio. And we came in the next day and all the equipment, the room, everything was damaged from the water. And we had 4 hours to get a show recorded that was going on. We went into a walk-in closet. They are the best recording studio you'll ever see. Because if you watch, you know, when you see things on television and you see people in a recording studio recording, those studios are built in a specific way. They have acoustic tile ceilings, they have sound deadening and softening glass. They, you know, they're set up in a specific way, special kind of carpet, everything. Basically a walk-in closet, if you can stand in there and put your hands on the walls, it's about the same thing. You have clothes hanging in there, that's the sound deafening, it'll absorb all the outside stuff. You've seen those big round things that go over microphones? We used to call them spit guards. They have a technical name, but that's what we used to call them. Yeah. You put those over, that stops them, you know, and when you're talking and things like that. And being, you know, now that there's this kind of technology, all you need in the closet with you is a chair, something to set that on, and the microphone and an extension wire running out the door. And you've got a perfect recording studio that will cut out your Harleys and your cat. I did it, then my cat was in the background. You know, things like that. So if you've got that kind of distraction, an open room, there's more, you know, with glass and windows and things, that lets in more noise.
It's a great suggestion.
So you're in a small place, just make sure you got a good light. Because if you're reading and you're doing, you know, you get this in front of your face, there goes your sound. So You know, if you have a music stand or something, those are the easiest thing to read from. You set the script on the stand and put the mic just above it. You read that way. So everybody's got a recording studio in their house.
Yeah, and even cheaper than that, I did one, I'm starting this, I've got a short story collection, a sci-fi short story collection, and based on the success of the Colorado sequence, I was like, well, I said early on in this, I'm getting a little bit more confident with my reading, and so I said, well, I'm going to give a shot with this, and I'll do the reading, and I won't ask Owen to do it. And what I did on Thursday night was I set up, I have a little easel, just a little 3-legged easel, and I have like a bedroll that has the egg crate foam, and I just kind of wrapped the crate thing around the easel and put the mic right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And that sound deafened it, and it was, you know, free. It cost nothing, so.
And if you're worried about the hangers, because a lot of people have hangers in there, if you have metal hangers, they're the worst. But, you know, if you want something that's going to be a smooth sound that you can get in a closet, take blankets, use clothespins, stick them on, you know, cover the clothes, just lay it over it, clothespin it to the rods, and it'll give you a flat surface, and then the sound, it goes in waves is what it's called. It'll wave back to you instead of, you know, slotting in between and stuff like that.
Real quick, did the sign-in sheet, I passed that around, I don't know, where did it get to? If you guys would sign in.
I was so absorbed in what you were saying.
And I can let you know about.
Hang signs around your house, like on the doors, you don't want the doorbell, because in some houses, the doorbell plays everywhere.
And a telephone. I mean, that's something you can't really account for.
Those are easy enough to mute, but really, signage can make a huge difference. You know, recording, setting, do not disturb, you know, pain of death, you know.
Sure. Absolutely. Are there any other questions about podcasting or anything related to publishing? I do have a couple of DVDs up here which are for sale from the bookstore for $19.99. I'll pass around some of these if you'd like to take a look at them. There you go, Shar.
Thank you.
Jack.
Can you comment on ebooks? Have you ever considered giving an ebook away of some of your work? Now that you've gotten some feedback from the marketing side of it?
That's great. The question was about ebooks. With Lulu, if you self-publish, if you decide to self-publish a book, you can actually have an ebook available as a PDF file. Now, I'll bet before long Lulu's going to tie something together with that Kindle. I've seen more and more people walking around with these Kindles where you could actually have your book available that way too. I don't think they have that yet, but don't quote me on that. They may already be in the pipeline there.
An ebook meaning a electronic.
An electronic book.
Yeah.
Have you seen, Amy, have you seen these Kindles, the Amazon Kindle thing? They're basically it's a portable electronic book essentially about that tall by about that wide.